as I explained. We have Patrick Lau, VP of Strategic Development from Comba Telecom, Kevin Persing, Director of Sales West Region for Fiplex, Ron Schachter, co-founder of the RF Solutions LLC, and Prince Niyyar, CEO of Commdex. And these comprise the board of directors and leadership of the Safer Buildings Coalition. And I'd like to congratulate and welcome the newly elected board of directors members, Prince Niyyar and Ron Schachter. Thank you, Eric. And Prince, can you tell us what's going on from a perspective of system integrators?
Well, thank you, John. For us personally, I'll speak from Commdex because we focus primarily on the public safety DAS. And for us, COVID-19 was more of a disruption than a decline. I think for a couple of months, things slowed down. But since then, kind of the business has come roaring back. In fact, kind of this quarter will be our best quarter ever in the 20-year history of the company. I think that has opened up, COVID-19 has opened up a lot of opportunities, particularly I think from talent acquisition. I think there probably never has been a better time to acquire or upgrade talent in DAS because a lot of opportunities available. Also, we are seeing growth in areas because of bandwidth, opportunities in schools, opportunities in telehealth. I think that's all kind of, so as a result of all the bandwidth that was needed because of the proliferation of Zoom meetings, people are realizing we need more bandwidth. I think as a result, you're seeing on the carrier side of things, the 5G deployment has accelerated by carriers. I think 5G will lead to the next phase, which is the Internet of Things, which will allow millions of sensors. So that's an area of opportunities. I think Internet of Things will then lead to smart cities. Smart cities will then lead to smart buildings. And I think that's where I think the future of our industry is going in terms of smarter buildings. And I think TIA has a very good initiative called Smart Building Initiative. I would recommend you guys look at it because it focuses on the 4 components: connectivity, data, interoperable building systems, and intelligence. And the holy grail, I think, of in-building is when we get to the machine learning and intelligence, artificial intelligence, when it comes to the in-building systems. I think that's what is, to me, the future of in-buildings, when we can use the artificial intelligence to predict, manage, prevent, and react to situations as they emerge. So that's kind of my perspective on where things are going. I'll hand it back to you, John.
Now, Prince, at Commdex, you guys do an awful lot of business with the government. You have a lot of experience and perspective there. Can you tell us a little bit about the federal programs that are underway right now, and maybe some insights about working with government agencies?
Because the budgets haven't been affected, at least for this year and probably next year as well, that the demand is there. But specifically kind of related to the codes and standards, I think because we work with jurisdictions in all 50 states across the country, kind of, the disparities regarding how those standards are interpreted, or even in some cases, there are kind of differences in standards. And one thing that I liked about SBC is that for members, kind of there is guidance regarding what the installation guidelines are, how to go about permits, and kind of for what the jurisdictional guidance. I think that has been a big value to us as we look at, as we go kind of and implement different jurisdictions. Having that reference book has been invaluable from understanding what the local requirements are. And but from the government standpoint, I think we're seeing that the need is as strong as it's ever been. And I think public safety in current marketplace, I think is they're realizing the need for more bandwidth. And FirstNet is definitely driving the adoption of more public safety inside the buildings is the trend that we are seeing from. That's what the codes and all that, I think it's going to go along with that as well.
Thank you. And just in your opinion, do you believe, Prince, that you're going to see an increase in infrastructure spending driven by the CARES Act or other infrastructure stimulus type packages? Do you think that that's something we could look forward to?
There already has been. I think from a communication standpoint, the budgets of the government have gone up. And I think that trend is going to continue next year as well, because I think once we get past kind of the political issues and all that, I think that there's definitely the investment in that infrastructure is going to continue. In fact, I think There is an next generation 911 legislation that is pending, that was approved by the Congress, but is held up by the Senate. I think that is going to further spur the spending in the public safety space. That's by itself is a $15 billion line item that's in the budget.
Coming to Prince, what are some of the challenges as the customers are coming to you and say, what should I do? Should I buy 5G now? Should I change my infrastructure? Should I wait? I've heard some people say that, well, maybe you should have a master infrastructure plan that's sort of future ready. What do you tell your customers in preparing for the future? You're on mute, Prince.
Sorry. Well, thank you. So I think the 5G technology is not ready as yet. So I think from what we look at it from, particularly from the public safety side of things, so even FirstNet, even though it's kind of being used for data, it's still not ready for the voice piece of it, because the mission critical push to talk has latency requirements, latency in it, so which makes kind of transmission of voice signals a little bit challenging over there. And that's where I think CBRS coming in and private LTE, I think is going to help tremendously. We are currently involved with deploying and maintaining a nationwide sensing network for Google CommScope for their spectrum access system. And we see, I mean, as we're looking forward, and I know there's an auction, very successful auction that happened on the CBRS. I think private LTE and CBRS will become the future of in buildings because of the security and the bandwidth that Patrick talked about. I think that's good, but more so, I think when you look at sectors like finance and healthcare that have requirements for privacy and security, because of the security offered by the SIM features and all that stuff, I think that's going to propel CBRS to be the next standard, or the spectrum that's used for private LTE going forward. And then once this 5G standards do mature, and then I think you're going to see that seamless transition from private LTE to 5G for the buildings. But as specifically for 5G itself, I think it's not ready even from the carrier standpoint. I think they are the final 5G NR, I think they're still kind of in the transition process right now. But I do see kind of eventually when the Internet of Things and all that comes in, that all the in-building, so I see the transition from DAS to CBRS public safety LTE, and eventually to CBRS 5G network. So I think that's how I see the vision of how the public safety in buildings are going to transition over the next few years.
Thank you. Migration to LTE, then now you have an interesting design question, because and another question was asked is, can you commingle land mobile radio and LTE, right? So if the main goal of the carriers is to have capacity and great up and down speeds, and if you're moving towards situational awareness type applications over LTE, which are data heavy, does it start to move from a coverage design to a capacity design?
It is. I think LTE, as you know, is more capacity design, and we do LMR systems. That's where we grew up as a company. For 20 years, we've been doing LMR systems. Every major city across the U.S. we have done. You will see footprints of Commdex in doing the public safety systems for them. So we're very familiar with what it takes to make an LMR system work with. But when it comes to FirstNet, I think the capacity issue takes over, and coupled with that is mission critical push to talk standards, which were just defined by 3GPP last year. So the carriers are still kind of getting used to that. There are applications available out there which let you have interoperability with your existing LMR voice and LTE. So that's kind of I see as the interim step before you go to mission critical push to talk. But I think that is coming, I would say, if not kind of in the next 2 to 3 years, in the next 3 to 5 years, I think you're going to see agencies transitioning to even voice to mission critical push to talk standards. And I think from that design standard, what used to be what we call as interoperability planning, where kind of you define how many people need to be on a particular talk group and all that stuff, I think that will become irrelevant, because now you can carry on those conversations and all that stuff.
Thank you. Now,